staff here today.
Press and hold both volume keys for 3 seconds to use TalkBack.
Dr. Johnson. First, let me apologize. I did not bring any stickers. But I would like to, before I begin, thank Public Works and all the flood control stuff. I will tell you that on December 20th of last year, my address was Channel Islands Boulevard in Port Hueneme. I say was because it's not there anymore. And so it is important to be prepared for all those emergencies and sign up for that reverse 911 and get the heads up and do what you can. So with that, I am Doug Leeper. I am the Director of Code Compliance here in the County of Ventura. And I would just like to provide a little overview of who we are and how we were established. In 2009, we were created, if you will, out of the enforcement personnel from both planning and building and safety, creating a division of 16 people to go out and coordinate efforts, because prior to that, you would have a zoning violation and a building violation, and two folks would go out, 2 letters would go out, 2 deadlines, right? So we don't do that anymore. Now it's one, and we try to make it efficient and effective and as educational as possible on the public. One of the things that I think is important to note is that compliance is the goal. We are not a revenue generating department. We are not here to fine and penalize. We're here to educate and encourage compliance with the codes that your board and previous boards have passed along with state law. And so there are basically 2 types of properties in the unincorporated county. Those that are in compliance and those that are not. And under those that are not, there's 2 basic types of folks. Those who don't know and those who don't care. And so with those who don't know, there are those that will and those that can't. Under those that don't care, we try to educate, encourage before we step into enforcement. I will tell you, people being people, we're not successful 100% of the time in encouraging and educating, and sometimes we do have to enforce. And each one of you, well, we've all had conversations about some of those cases, and so you're well aware of the challenges before us. But I do want to reiterate, we are about compliance, not penalty. Highlighting the major tasks before us: non-permitted construction. Again, anything that's actively being constructed without the proper permits and approvals falls to us. We go out. Everybody receives an opportunity to stop and come into compliance, get the permits before any fines or penalties are issued or any enforcement action is taken. Everyone, I will say 99.9% of our cases, are afforded an opportunity to correct and comply. Substandard housing conditions. This particular location was a property owner who has multiple locations and was working the system, if you will, in housing folks here that had some cognitive and mental issues. There were, I believe, 14 people living on this property, and there are another 3 properties out there. And so we went out, we were called out, we went out and told her, you can't do this anymore. And this is one of the very few that we move forward through criminal prosecution. As you can see, there's a shower over there in that left, the picture on the left, and that shower is contained in the center picture there, that plywood shed, and the person who was using that shower was being housed in the garage, which is on the right. We also do zoning violations, right? Zoning is to keep uses consistent, compatible, and it has more to do with quality of life, although sometimes there is health and safety involved. You can see there's a kind of a wrecking yard on the left and a contractor storage yard on the right, without proper permits and approvals and with not being in the correct zone. Again, notice, opportunity to comply. Our reactive inspections run the gamut, from overheight fences to excessive outdoor storage to illegal campgrounds, you name it, we've heard it. Well, now that I've said that, we'll get something new as soon as I get back, I'm sure. But somebody will hear that as a challenge. We always ask for consent to inspect, but when that is denied, we do have the ability to go forward through the court to get an inspection warrant. That's what happened with the property on the left. On the right, after years of notices, there was a property owner change who invited us on, and we went out with a team addressing, I'm going to say, hundreds of violations on several acres, and it is now coming into compliance with an ownership change. Encroachment and modification of protected trees, that is one of the things we do proactively. Most of what we do is reactive. If we see somebody trenching, parking, digging, cutting, we stop, ask if they have the proper permits. If they don't, we stop them. This is one of the areas that they may not get as much time to comply. It may be an issue of an enforcement action upon arrival. Court-appointed receivership. Some of these properties have issues of substandard housing that are difficult to address. We've had 12, in my tenure here of 7.5 years, we've had 12 properties go to court-appointed receivership, or at least get started in that program. Only 3 of them have had to go all the way through the program because the action itself motivated the property owners to either abate the nuisances or sell the properties to somebody else who did in fact abate the nuisances. This particular one up by Ojai had been a problem for us, and I say us being the county, and the neighbors for 15 years. We finally were able to get a court-appointed receiver and went in. These are some of the conditions that were present on the property. If you've been up the highway, you probably saw it. What was happening was there were numerous illegal sheds and structures on the property being used by folks, unhoused folks using this for housing with the property owner's permission. There was bootleg electrical, there was a lot of different issues out here. And when we went before the judge, again, we petitioned the judge to appoint a receiver. The judge then appoints a receiver, and that receiver works for the court, not for the county. And so in this case, they abated all the nuisances that were present, and that's what the property looks like today. And so now that this abatement is completed, the receiver will take the property and all of the costs, including county staff time and fines and penalties that have accrued, to the judge with the total saying this is what the property owner owes on this particular program. If the property owner can't afford to pay that, the judge will order the property sold to make those. And so it kind of becomes almost a zero-sum game to the county to go out and abate these incredibly complicated issues for the neighbors. Most recently, the only addition to staff we've received in our 15 years in existence has been for the TRUE program. We got 4 officers for that, and it's working quite well. We get our applications in, processed, inspected, and approved, or with corrections need to be made out in a very timely manner. And you'll note that little red box down there on the left above those photos is non-compliant. We're working with the listing platforms. They will check with us, make sure that the property that's being advertised within the overlay is in fact permitted, and if not, then they'll flag it. And if they continue to do that, we issue them a notice of violation that they have to come in and get a permit. And we have a very high success rate in that. We've only had to, in the 5 years we've been doing this, we've only had to take less than a dozen forward with notices of violation and penalties because they haven't complied. Most recently, sidewalk vending, and we're going to be getting 3 additional officers to run that. We're working that program now, have contracts out ready to be assigned, and we'll be back in after the first of the year with some stats on that, as well as we're going to come back with some other potential enhancements to the program, enhancements to the public nuisance ordinance. Our goal is to be efficient and effective, and we currently don't have all the tools we need to do that. And so we're going to be presenting that to you and be asking for some additional tools and letting you know that the state, again, has passed a mandate. Go figure. And that, in fact, there's going to be a proactive rental housing component starting January 1, in that if a multifamily residence is reported with a violation, and that violation is of substandard housing that could, in fact, be affecting the other units in that multifamily complex, or there's a likelihood that those conditions are present in other units, we are then mandated to inspect the entire complex. And so I can tell you in other jurisdictions I've managed proactive rental housing programs, and they are incredibly time consuming, but they do afford a level of minimum standard for the tenants that that are out there, some of which are compromised and are being taken advantage of. So that's the hope and the goal, that this will address some of that. So here's our mighty staff, small but mighty. Together we have over 400 years of investigation, documentation, and enforcement. And I wasn't going to do this. I'll tell you that I've been in local government for 40 years. I've been in code enforcement for 30. I've worked in numerous jurisdictions. I've consulted and I've managed contracts with other jurisdictions. I can tell you that that staff right there, it's the best staff I've ever worked with. And you're very fortunate to have each and every one of them. Thank you.
Doug, I would completely agree.
Yeah.
The amount of just talking with our community and seeing how we can get around things. I remember when we first hired you, and it was great because you brought in a whole persona of, you know, the law is a tool in your toolbox that you can use. But in general, we want to all get together and make sure the good of everybody. And so I really appreciate your leadership in all of that to make things better. It's not just a slap of a code enforcement, here's a bill, pay it, whatever. It's how do we work with you? How do we make things better? Because overall, it's public safety. I mean, I want to go to a restaurant and not get sick for food. And people don't think about that freezer going out and what that would do. Or a public pool. I mean, there's just so many things, and just I want to say thank you to your entire team for the good work of going out there and doing the hard job. So thank you so much. Supervisors, any comments? We have a public speaker. Okay, one public speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Our in-person speaker is going to be Nick. Nick, if you could please proceed to the podium.
Good morning to the people of Ventura County and the supervisors, county council, Tiffany North, and staff. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to the people of the county of Ventura who think we are over-policed. A lot of what the gentleman just said, the director, was false. It is not questioned that we live in the most regulated state in the union. So when I'm confronted with the county government not following the laws that Mr. Leeper states he knows about, and the Board of Supervisors piles on 160 pages in the Ventura County Building Code on top of thousands of pages of building code requirements, that's over-policed. It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read. Well, I can read them, and so can Mr. Leeper, and so can County Council North. They're not that hard to read unless we get attorneys that want to obfuscate them. 2 attorneys on the board also, who have written a letter to every single one of you in the last 2 years, and the silence has been deafening. When the county does not follow the laws that Mr. Leeper speaks of, they lose the consent of the governed. We are the governed. It came up in Mr. Leeper's attitude. It's a zero-sum game for the county. He doesn't understand we're the county. We're the county. They're
Sir,
not the
address
county.
the board, please.
Pardon me?
You're to address the board. Thank you.
In the county, building code, the Board of Supervisors has granted police powers to the Director of Code Compliance by authorizing the Director to use the building official title and granted the building officials police powers. I recently have been in communication with the RMA Director's Office and was told that Code Compliance Manager is not required to possess a building official certification. Mr. Leeper does not possess a certified building official certificate. Under the Public Records Act, I requested certifications of his staff members. They don't possess any either.
Thank you for your comment. Your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you for your comments. If you have anything else, you can submit it to clerkoftheboard@ventura.org.
I'll be sending in each one of you like I have previously, as well as the clerk.
Thank you, sir.
And Ms.
Appreciate it.
Moore.
Go ahead, Supervisor Gorell.
Thanks, Doug. You had the opportunity to show your photograph of your staff, and small but mighty group of folks that do amazing
I
work.
have 3 minutes.
And we've
He gets
given
to
you
talk all
as
day to
a
back slide.
department even more responsibility just in the last few months, and yet this team hasn't necessarily grown exponentially as it could and should. But so these folks do amazing work, and we're grateful for them and for you as well. And I know that when you respond in my district in particular to areas, properties that are hosting events and they're doing so unpermitted, you're not doing so because you're capriciously trying to enforce against them, but you're doing it to protect the property rights of those around them and to create fairness, which is their constitutional entitlement as well. And I know that when you bring before us plans to enforce against sidewalk vending, you're doing so because you're protecting the public. We saw the video of the car crashing into sidewalk vending and the people waiting. And we see how dangerous it is to do this on the roadsides, and so it's really important work you do because you are protecting people and saving lives in many ways. So thank you, Mr. Leeper. Appreciate the presentation.
Supervisor Leeper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to follow up excuse me, on the comments from my colleague. It's just, I think all of us probably hear from our constituents with questions, concerns about the code enforcement process. And I've always found that Mr. Leeper and his team are always just willing and able to jump right in, to engage with property owners, to inform, to educate, to work with them through the code enforcement process. And as a supervisor, I always really appreciate their willingness to really jump in and to have that face-to-face contact with my constituents who call in. And so I just want to say thank you to you and your entire team for your willingness to be such partners in this whole process. And it's never, as my colleague said, nefarious or heavy-handed. It's always jumping in with a want to help. So I appreciate that.
Supervisor Carbon.
I just want to echo what my colleagues have said. It's amazing how fast your department responds to our questions, and oftentimes they're challenging and complicated. And I think one of those pictures was in my district that you had. I recognized it actually. And you're dealing with a lot of unfunded state mandates at your department. And to watch you today get emotional over your team meant a lot to me. It just puts the cherry on top of the work that you do. So thank you to you and your department, and thank you for being so responsive to us.
All right, let's go down for a photo. Please bring your whole team.
Okay, you guys tell us what to do. You're just still lining up. All right,
3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Let's take 4. 1, 2, 3. This is time. 1, 2, 3. And hold on for a moment. She's going to take a photo. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Doug.
Sorry.
All right, thank you.
Wait a minute,
Thank
hold
you.
on. Got it. All right.